for a rotten hooker.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday. I am a very religious person.
I thought I was a good Christian.
The very line the serpent told to Eve in the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. The gospel of Jesus Christ spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ spreads confusion and
It is September 10th, 2012, and this is This Non-Religious Life, and I am Jason, and all the way across the galaxy is Bob.
The galaxy is his living room.
Yeah.
How's it going?
And Ken's not going to be with us tonight, so it's just going to be Bob and I, and let me tell you, when we take controls of the show, it's going to be interesting.
I can only hope. Dare
Yeah.
to dream.
But anyway, one quick announcement. Both Bob and I are, next week actually, are going to be traveling to California to take up permanent residence. He's going to do it sooner than me. We're leaving at the same time. So during that time, we're not going to have shows until he gets settled in his new place. And then we're going to set him up. And then it's just going to be him and Ken until I can get settled. So this will be the last episode for at least 3 weeks, at least. So if you haven't caught up on the past shows, I guess you could do that. But keep sending us your comments, keep sending us your questions, because we will address them once we come back on the show. But speaking of questions and comments, we did receive a email actually.
We did. We got a lengthy email from a listener named Gary, and it was really great. We thought we should read it and address his concerns because I think he's got really valid concerns. And so Gary says, guys of TNRL, for a few months now, my wife and I have been at odds about sending our daughter to private school. It is the school that my wife went to as a kid and wants our daughter to attend there as well. My wife isn't particularly religious, but if you grill her, she still clings to basic Christian beliefs covered up by a thick shroud of open-mindedness, which is good, and reasonable thinking and a solid acceptance of things such as evolution, etc. I recently came to terms with sending her to this school. I think as someone who will be very involved with my daughter's learning, I believe I can guide her through going to this school while encouraging her to question what she is learning. The only problem I've run into is that recently I've found out that the science curriculum, the course of the school most important to me that she get accurate information from, is the A Beka science curriculum, a series of Christian-centered texts that teach science from a Christian perspective. From all the people I've spoken to about attending private school, the one thing I have been universally warned about are A Beka texts being extremely inaccurate and right-wing propaganda directly refuting evolution and climate change, and the health portion blatantly attacking homosexuality. I've come to terms with sending her to this school, but I cannot stand for allowing her to learn from textbooks that give blatantly false or twisted information like that humans and dinosaurs lived at the same time, or that evolution is a man-made idea with no basis in reality. Have you guys ever heard anything about these texts? Or if not, what would you do in my position, as she is going to be going to the school and be learning from these books, and I will be forced to buy these books and watch her do homework answering questions that are going to actively brainwash her to reject the ideas of evolution and accept that God can actively change any laws of nature at will. How can I counteract this? Will this not have as much of an effect on her as I think? Thanks.
Well, I think just straight up, I mean, I know it's a difficult position to be put into, that you would have to challenge family members as well as school members. So I think one of the easiest steps the individual could make is invest in a lot of documentaries, invest in a lot of readings that cater to your worldview, and make sure that your child understands that as well. And that way she's getting both sides of the stories, and hopefully will make the correct decision.
I on a lot of points on that. I definitely agree. But so first of all, my ex-wife used to teach in a private school, and she taught the A Beka curriculum, and it was like kindergarten, first grade, very elementary school education, and the thing about the A Beka curriculum was that in terms of reading and language, it was wildly successful. Either that or maybe she was just a good teacher, but her class, their reading level and comprehension was much higher than at the end of the year than when they started. And she emphasized a lot of reading and language skills. And so was their success due to the A Beka curriculum, or was she a good teacher? Was it a combination of both? I don't know. But she attributed it to the strength of the curriculum. As far as the science stuff goes, she balked at some of the instances where in the early A Beka curriculum, it literally shows like this is Noah and all the animals got on the ark, and it teaches that flood story and the story of Noah's Ark as scientific fact. And she chose.
How's that even possible? I have not seen the text. So what is? It just tells that story of the Bible, and people are like, okay, that happened.
Yeah. It presents that story as fact, and she sort of her take on it, or what she did was she just sort of ignored that part of the curriculum. Like she just didn't cover that area in the textbook, and she concentrated more on the reading and language skills.
So they didn't receive a science.
No, their science education in that regard was probably very lacking. So rather than teach a curriculum that she felt was untrue, she just sort of dropped the ball on the curriculum altogether. Now, as a parent, if I had a kid and if I was a parent, I would just be sort of resigned to the fact that my kid's science education is going to be up to me. I don't have kids, so it's hard for me to say what anybody should or shouldn't do. But even in public schools now, they're fighting battles with creationists. And if your daughter or son is going to a school and you've resigned yourself that they're going to go to that school, then you just also have to take it upon yourself that you're going to be in charge of their science education, and it's just going to be up to you. But that's really not such a bad thing, because here's the good news: there's lots of stuff out there to help you. There is a ton of stuff out there to help you. In fact, Eugenie Scott's organization, they're the NCSE, National Center for Science Education. They have a website. They are full of educational materials that parents can use to augment, supplement, or just take over their children's science education. And that's all they're dedicated to doing is providing those science-based education materials. Apparently I have a problem. So they're dedicated to providing those science-based educational materials, to making them available for parents. And where I disagree with Jason, and it's not that I disagree, and this is a subtle, nuanced thing, but it's one of those things like, it's not about teaching both sides of the story.
I wasn't saying that he should. There's nothing that he can do to stop the other side to being taught to his child. Nothing.
I know, but see what happens is, I think we're all guilty of this, and we all fall prey to it. But we all fall because the Christian right and those creationist movements, they've tricked us, and now we say things, we use language like both sides of the story, or we're inundated with these ideas of like equal time. It's not a both sides of the story issue. This is the science. This is the scientific worldview, and this is not. It's not like
that's two sides of the story.
I know, but
it doesn't. But when you're talking to somebody who believes in the non-science part, there's nothing that you can say that is going to bring them across. If they believe God created the world in 7 days, if they believe the biblical sense of how the world is created, there's not a damn thing that you can say that they're not going to rationalize God into it. So
that's very true.
And if you're going to a school that the academic is taught that side, and you have a kid and you believe differently, then yes, both sides will be taught. And that's what I'm saying. It's not like I'm saying, well, if you're in a school setting, then you have to have a classroom for this and a classroom for this, and they have to swap sides. I'm saying this is the cards that you're handed. They're going to get both sides.
I know. And maybe it might be sort of a pet peeve of mine. I don't like to discuss these ideas of creationism versus evolution. I mean, that's two debates, but there is no two sides of evolution. There's no two sides to it.
But there may not be.
But see, what happens is a lot of times in these arguments, that's how it gets framed, which is why I try to avoid it altogether. It's not two sides. It is. Well, I mean, it's two sides if you consider it. This is truth and this is fiction. But evolution doesn't have two sides. There's no two sides to the evolution argument. It is. This is the scientific consensus and everything else, and one is right and one is wrong. I mean, those are the two sides, and I don't like to speak in those terms because that gives the creationist movement sort of the strength and the backing that they're looking for. They want to talk about it in terms of sides. They want to talk about it in terms of fairness and equal time. That's what they want.
Well, it's like what we were talking about in the car the other day. I forget what the topic was, but we were talking about how they frame the conversation to already put you in belief that it exists. So you're no longer arguing the foundation. You're arguing, the smaller details to it.
Which is why I don't like to speak in those terms of two sides. Now, if I had a kid that was in school that was sort of being indoctrinated with that A Beka curriculum, I wouldn't say, or I would approach it thusly. I would say, like, little Johnny or little Susie, what did you learn in school today? Well, Daddy, we learned that God created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day He rested. And the first man and the woman were Adam and Eve, and Noah took all the animals on the ark and saved them from God's wrath in the flood. I would sort of take that, and I would have to let them know. I mean, these are hard conversations to have with your kid, but I guess they're necessary ones. I would have to say, like, well, that's what some people believe, and that belief is wrapped up in a lot of things. But here's this other thing called science, and this is how science accomplishes what it does. This is how science determines these things, and this is what we've learned through this process called science. And it's not about science. Isn't about what we believe. It's about what we can prove. And it's about how we evaluate evidence, and it's about how, how we look for truth, and it isn't about sides. It's where where the evidence leads, and so you have to sort of not only teach your kids the fact of the matter, but teach them the process in and of itself. Like, teach them, this is the scientific method. This is how we determine these things. We made an observation. We made a hypothesis. We tested it. We checked the test results against our hypothesis. We reevaluated, tested again. It's a process that goes on and on and on and on. And the that story you just heard about God created the world in 7 days. Well, that was just somebody wrote that in a book. And we can't test that, or we've shown it to be not true, and I don't know. I guess that kid, that person in school, they would have to almost live in two worlds. They would have to realize that they were being taught mythology.
But how's that different? I mean, we already live in those two worlds. I mean, even as adults, we live in that two world. Even like me as an individual, I went to church and I was taught these things, and it didn't need to be in a school textbook. It didn't need to be in school, but at church I was taught that these things were truths. These things happened. These things were the worldview that you subscribe to when you say you're a Christian. So we do have that parallel. Yes, we can, when we're, as adults, we can take ourselves out of further away from these two worlds. At least one side of the worldview. But they still exist. There's still people out there, which is bringing me to the going back to what you said before, of teaching your kid. It's up to, once you decide that you're going to be the person of science in your family and bring science to your child. I have real hesitation in hearing that. It kind of makes me nervous and kind of makes me, my stomach cramp up when I hear that parents are doing this. Because, yes, it's great if your parents are intelligent. It's great if your parents have some sort of education background. It's great, like if you like you said, you would be a parent. You're an engineer. You have that background. You could do this. There are a lot of parents out there. One, they don't have the time. Two, they don't have the knowledge to be able to read something on the website that you gave and understand it well enough to explain it to their child. And so, and I'm not saying they're bad parents because they can't understand science or they can't understand, I'm sure given the time, anybody can understand it, but life is hard. Life, you have to work, you come home late, there's daycares involved. And so embracing that, I don't know what this commenter life looks like, but it's difficult to embrace your child. I mean, Texas right now is huge in homeschooling, and the things that I hear, because I know people who are involved with homeschool and are involved with the homeschool community. The things that I hear that come from them are frightening because they're all Christian based.
I think the vast motivation for homeschooling comes from a Christian fundamentalist background. Like that, the people that homeschool their children, it's generally not because they feel. Well, I mean, they might feel that the public school system is inadequate, but really what they want to do is get that Christian indoctrination going on their kids. I really think that
or some other crazy conspiracy theory.
That might not be the sole motivator, but I think that's the largest motivator. And hey, it's America and free country. You can really do what you want. But which sort of brings me. I also wanted to talk about the Bill Nye comment because Bill Nye, the science guy, he you need to stop.
No.
He had a lengthy video on this YouTube segment. It was called The Big Think, and they had a lot of people.
With the website, bigthink.com.
And so he had a video that was posted in Big Think, and he was basically saying, like, look, if you want to teach your kids that the Earth is 6,000 years old or 10,000 years old, and that it was created by God and Adam and Eve were the first man and woman. He's like, that's fine. You can do that. But it's stupid. Yeah. It's not true. You can say it all you want, but it doesn't make it so.
Well, he didn't say that if you wanted to teach your kids, because if you want to believe in that as an adult,
sure,
you should believe in it.
No, you're absolutely right.
But you should not teach it to your kids.
Or more importantly, he said we shouldn't be teaching it in school as science.
Yeah.
There's a place for I think there's a place for religious studies, and I think there's a place for theological thought, but not in a science class. Certainly, you cannot say with scientific certainty that the Earth is 6,000 years old when we know for a fact that is not true. And it's not just because we have one radiometric carbon dating method that says things are this old. It's lots and lots and lots of things that all add up, and all the arrows point in the same direction. And when we have new evidence, that doesn't seem to refute the old evidence. It just strengthens it. Like I've been reading the Lawrence Krauss book, and he devotes a whole chapter about determining the age of the universe, which that seems like it's pretty complicated to do. And we guesstimated on earlier data, we guesstimated that the age of the universe was 14 billion years old.
That's impossible.
Yeah. And then they had more data, and they were like, nope, turns out it's 13.7. And then they get more data, and they go, nope, it's 13.75. They're just refining the number. They're getting more and more accurate with it. It's not like somebody found something and went, oh, we have to rewrite everything. It's refining the knowledge that we have. And our estimations of the age of the Earth, they get better and better the more data we get.
And they're going to find out it's only 2,000 years old.
Yeah, I know. Right. Yeah, but you can't just... And Bill Nye got a lot of flack for that.
Well, he gets a lot of flack for a lot of things.
He gets a lot of flack for a lot. Yeah, I know. And what's funny, too, is I was listening to him talk, and he was saying that part of the reason he's getting a lot of the blowback is because a lot of homeschool families use his program, Bill Nye the Science Guy, as part of their science curriculum.
Well, that's good.
Which is good, but then when he says, they get mad when he says the Earth is more than 6,000 years old.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing. Even what was it, last year, maybe 2 years ago, when he was giving a talk in Texas, and
the light of the moon.
People said, "We believe in God here," and they stormed out because he said that the moon was not lit; it was a reflection.
Yeah. Well, his point in that was that in Genesis it says, like, God made the sun to light the day and the moon to light the night, the lesser and the greater lights. And his point was that, if you look at this passage in the Bible, it's pretty clear that the person who wrote it really didn't have any understanding of what was happening. They didn't understand that the moon was just reflected light of the sun. They didn't know that. And his point was that the Bible is not a good source of scientific information, which seems like it should be obvious, but people got really upset about that. Right. I mean, we've been saying all along, like, if the Bible were such a inspired document and such a source of great information, why didn't it have things like the germ theory of disease or the printing press or anything else that would be valuable or useful? And I don't know. But have you seen that? It turns out it's not true, although I wish it was, about that Senator Aiken, the legitimate rape guy, had a response to the...
Oh, from the Onion. I think it was the Onion wrote up a response.
I don't know if it was an Onion response, but it was so good where Bill Nye called him a fucking idiot and wanted to duke it out mano a mano, and they were going to fight or debate. And he was like, you bring your Bible and I'll bring facts, and we'll see who wins. And I don't know. But it turns out it's not true. Yeah. I wish it was, though. It was so good.
I don't see Bill Nye challenging anybody to a fist fight.
Yeah. Well, it was a metaphorical fist
I know.
fight.
I still don't see him doing that.
But so, he dropped an F-bomb quite a bit in it. And so I was like, oh, I want it to be true because it's so good, but I just don't think Bill Nye would talk that way.
So to bring it back around, so what advice can we give out? Like, is there any solid advice that we can give this individual?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of resources that a person can use. And you said, like, it's time consuming. Find the time, and it's hard because you got to learn a lot. Make the time to learn those things.
I mean, it is your kid's future.
It's your children. That's. I know I'm inherently lazy, which is why I don't have kids.
Wait, that's probably. Never mind. I'm not even gonna.
Yeah.
I'm lazy. You ready? No, I'm just gonna go to sleep.
Yeah, I know. Honey, Big Bang is on. Come on.
Come on.
No, like I said, fortunately for parents that want to take charge of their kids' science education, there's a lot of resources out there for you. There's the NCSE. I think the James Randi Educational Foundation, I think they have a lot of online resources for you. There's I guess we'll start with like NCSE. I would look at JREF.
Well, there's mecca of websites out there that every university and every secondary school has their programming for free. And I'm not saying you would teach your kid, your elementary school kid, science from the university level, but as a parent, they're all video and audio, so you can listen to them while you're driving. You can listen to them at work or on your lunch break or whatever, and get the knowledge from universities and learn about it.
There's been this new movement of we owe it all really to Carl Sagan of popularizing science. And Bill Nye, popularizer of science, and Neil deGrasse Tyson, another popularizer of science, and they've worked really hard to make those scientific discoveries accessible and available to you. I mean, look at the last year Dawkins published his book that was geared towards a younger audience. It wasn't a what is it called? The Magic of Reality. How we know what we know. How we know what's true. And he really does gear it towards, that 12, 13, 14-year-old that has questions about how do we know these things. I mean, I remember being a kid, you had to go look it up in the library, and you had to figure out the Dewey Decimal System.
You had to get the Encyclopedia Britannica, and you're like, Mom, buy me the Time Life Encyclopedia kit. Come.
Yeah.
That's how I learned about the planets. I used to be obsessed with it. Read that all the time, the encyclopedia.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, right. So there's a lot of good information out there, and man, the internet, what a resource. That could you?
I thought you were going to say what a ripoff.
No. Well, it can be a ripoff. I mean, but having the internet available to you is that's a whole nother skill set, because now you have to apply. Again, back to Sagan, you have to apply the baloney detector, because there's a lot on the internet that's crap, and so figuring out what's crap and what's not is a skill unto itself, but an important one, and I think one that actually will benefit young learners later in life. Remember when we went to the library? If you want to know anything, you looked it up in the encyclopedia, and it was true. Like that was if you read it in a book in the library, it was true. There was no.
I don't know about that. I mean, I think that might be kind of biased because we're youth and we don't know the difference.
Right, but it never crossed our mind that it might not be true.
But I mean, but we never talked to an adult and said, and somebody who had a bigger worldview than us at the time were saying, well, that's not really the way it is. I mean, I'm not saying just necessarily encyclopedias, but you said just a book, we would read it and it would be true. There was propaganda booklets out all since the beginning of time. So
well,
I mean,
yeah, but when
as youth, we wouldn't know the difference. We wouldn't know the difference, just the same way as the youth in this letter that we received is not going to know that Noah's Ark is not real. It's not the way the world was. God creating it in 7 days or 6 days. Won't know that's not how the world's created it until they get a broader worldview.
I mean, yeah, but that's not to say that the propaganda wasn't out there, but those propaganda books, those things that were controversial, they weren't in my school library. I mean,
because they were banned.
Yeah. Which is why I mean, like when I was a kid, if you read it in some book in the library, you believed it. I mean, it never crossed my mind that it might not be true.
But that doesn't mean it wasn't.
No, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. It never even occurred to me to ask.
Yeah.
And so now, like that idea of wondering if it's true or not, that's sort of like a new thing. Or
but do you think
later
kids,
in life, it's something I should have grown up doing, but I didn't.
Do you think the kids today in school who read stuff online, who happen to go to the library, who are in school and go to the school library, when they hear something, when they're taught something, do you think they are saying the same thing? It's like, why would I second guess this? Why would I think this is not true? Why would this be in front of me if it wasn't true? Do you think kids are doing that? I mean, because look at all the memes that go around on the internet that people believe that
Yeah.
Obviously, in our eyes, you can look at it and go, "There's no way in hell that's true. That's photoshopped or whatever." But there's people out there who who keep spreading it as if it's truth.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I don't know if it's kids or if it's just adults or what.
That's a good question. And I don't know. Like anything, I think that it's probably like a spectrum of responses.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
But it seems like the only spectrums I see are like people who are very critical and people who are complete idiots. It's like doesn't seem to be any middle ground.
It's black and
I gotta
white.
tell you, the idiots seem to be outnumbering the people who are critical about it. I don't know, man. Like, I see things and I'm like, people don't read. They don't read this stuff. I see somebody makes a post and then somebody answers a question about it
based on the title.
And then like 5 responses down on the Facebook thread, somebody asks the same question.
Yeah.
Because they didn't read it. They didn't read the whole thing. They just said, oh, and they just asked the question. When somebody else just did it, the answer is there. They just didn't read it.
Well, and also, I mean, even taking it away from Facebook, news articles are the world's worst about it. They'll put some kind of crazy headline in there that really does not tell if you read the story of the news article, is not what happened. But the catchy headline, and people don't read the article, they'll catch the headline and they'll share it with their friends and say, oh my God, I can't believe this person did this. But when you read it, you're like, what? They actually didn't do that.
Yeah, I've seen that. Like, sadly, the person that writes the article is not necessarily the same person that writes the headline.
Yeah.
And the headlines are just made to get your attention, and in that instance, I guess it worked. But
it's kind of it's sad because then the idea, this false story is pushed out there, and everybody believes this false story based on this catchy headline, and when the story itself really had nothing to do with it.
Well, again, thinking about a child's science education, it really seems like where we're zeroing in is that a critical thinking skill is more important than facts and figures, and which if I had the kid in school and they came home with the Noah's Ark story, or the Earth is 5,000 years old, I would say, well, the scientific community says that the Earth is 4 billion years old, and then the question is, well, how do we know that? Well, that's a good question. How do we know that? Well, we have this evidence and that evidence, and we have radiometric carbon dating, we have tree rings, and we have fossil data, and we have all these things. And then when you learned in school that the Earth is 5,000-6,000 years old, well, how do we know that? Well, because God said so. And so, which one do you think?
And again, that's a lot of information for a young kid to process, to have deep understanding of it.
It is,
but does that
somewhere.
encourage the kid to speak out within the class?
Well, that's another, that's another issue entirely, because I bet you that if you have one precocious child, he might stand up and say, well, it turns out this is a story, and and this is how it's a story, and I know because my dad showed me this, that, or the other thing, and this is wrong. And I'm like, that's another kettle of fish, and I don't know how you would deal with that other than to say, little Johnny, some people believe this, and I agree with this too, and I'm not saying you have to give deference to the Christian right, but you do have to be respectful of other people's beliefs. And
you said that with hesitation.
I know. I'm like thinking about it. I'm like,
You're like, I don't want those words coming out of my mouth.
But to a point, you do. And I've always said that I don't have a whole lot of problem with religion until it starts making claims about the world or legislating away people's rights. You can feel and believe whatever you want, but when you start voting away people's rights, or you start making claims about the world that aren't true, well, then I would be opposed to that. And it's very contextual too. There's a right time and a place for a debate about religion, and a small child's classroom, I don't think is it.
I don't know. I mean, I guess if the kid feels compelled to do it, not out of an act of defiance, but out of an act of wanting, I guess, to challenge to get more education from their teacher. I think it might be a place for it, because back when
I know, dude, if I found out that I had a kid and he stood up in class and said that the religion, I on one hand I'd be like, all right, you got to be respectful.
I'm going to punish you with
yeah,
pizza.
little Johnny, you go.
I mean, because that's what happened when I started expanding my worldview. I was in school and I was in government class, and at the time I was reading books about whistleblowers and anarchist thought and stuff, and my government teacher said straight to the class, the government does not go out of their way to lie to you. And being the personality that I am, of course, my hand went up immediately, and I started, and when he called on me, I rattled off like 6 different. I was like, "What about this? What about this? What about this? What about this?" And his response to me was, face palm, go to the office. And I had to sit in the office the rest of the day. But
yeah. In that context, it's shame on that teacher for not wanting to handle your questions.
Yeah.
And so, like maybe teaching a child to be respectful of other people's beliefs isn't to say, all right, little Johnny, the earth is really 4 billion years old because we have all of this evidence that says so, and that gives you license to stand up and tell people that they're wrong, is kind of maybe the wrong way to go about it. Like maybe you should say, look, little Johnny, if you're told this, ask them how do they know, or ask a question. Don't make a statement about someone else's ideas. Ask a question about it. Ask, well, how do you know that Noah's Ark is true? And how do we know that there was a flood? And how do we know that Adam and Eve were the first man and woman?
Well, I know
those would be appropriate questions, and the teacher may or may not be prepared to deal with them.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is like, those are appropriate questions. There's nothing wrong with those questions, but my experience of human nature is when you challenge personal viewpoints, worldviews, you don't, very rarely do you ever get a positive response.
Well,
tell somebody you're vegan. You don't even have to make another statement. Then, no thanks, I'm vegan. You will feel the wrath.
That's sad, but I'm sure it is true, and that doesn't make it right.
No.
And so, I think that a small child asking those questions is entirely appropriate, and so now the ball is in the court of the adults to
be grown up about it.
Yeah, right. To be responsive and to answer as an adult. Now, maybe the teacher is a top-notch apologeticist. Maybe they have all the spin answers. Maybe they can say like, oh well, there's this evidence that says that Adam and Eve is true, and we know this. And
so when does it become? But when does it become a point? Because we're talking about, in this situation, we're talking about an elementary school age child. When does the spin doctrine on? Doesn't matter what side they're both pointing fingers and saying it's cherry picking and spin doctrine, whatever. When does that spin doctrine start to breed apathy or start to breed like, I don't care about any of this anymore because there's just so much contradiction to it. There's so much anger. There's so much whatever it may be that I don't care about your science. I don't care about your God. I don't care about the world around me. When does that happen? And I mean, because it does happen. Because that's why
I don't know, and all I could say is I hope later rather than sooner. That's the best you can do. And man, I'll tell you what. I wish that growing up, I mean, my family sort of fostered a wonder about science. I mean, when I grew up, I got microscopes and telescopes and chemistry sets and books and
I have a 3D planetarium in my closet still.
Science-minded toys, but it was sort of like, here it is, and then off you go. I didn't really have any mentoring or instruction, and just that little bit. I mean, just that little bit that I got has really carried me a long way as far as like, wonder about the universe and a really strong passion about science. And so I think that apathy that you're talking about is a possible consequence, but I also think that a little bit of instruction will go a long way to fostering a lifelong love of science in a kid. I really do. I think that it doesn't take much.
So you're saying pretty much we're overthinking the issue. We are putting more.
I don't think we're overthinking it, because I think it is a valid question. I think you're absolutely right, because I find myself getting that way. Not to get too political about it, but a lot of people that I know are having these political debates about the Obama administration, their economic policies versus what the Romney administration would do if he were to win, and it's going back and forth. And I tell you, it's really complicated. I don't really, you're not sure who to believe or who has it right. And it turns out economic policy is incredibly complicated. And even guys who are economists don't have all the answers. So it's one of those things, like, I'm kind of getting apathetic about it, where I'm like, look, none of you know the answers, so I'm tired of hearing about it. But I think science is a little different. I think that a little mentoring, a little instruction to a child regarding their science education is going to go a long way. I think it'll go a long way to fostering in them a lifelong love of science. Like I said, it doesn't take much. It's not going to take a whole lot, and it'll carry all the way through.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully, I don't have a study to back that up, but I think it's true.
So what you're saying is you have faith.
Yeah. I do. Gotcha. Checkmate, atheist.
Did you see the new meme that's going around, the checkmate atheist new meme? I don't know if I sent it to you or not, but it was like, if God didn't exist, why do cats have stripes? And it was like a whole big long. It was dumb.
Yeah, that's stupid.
It really is stupid.
Why do cats have pretty stripes?
I don't know. Maybe.
You know what's funny about that is that whole thing. If you read further on in that meme, it's a picture of somebody's essay, and they're talking about.
Actually, no, it's a trifold pamphlet that's handed out.
Okay, but it's a rant about if atheism were to go unchecked, how would we be moral? And then it goes on to ask these questions about, like, why do cats have pretty stripes? Why is man remorseful when he sins? And why are there beautiful flowers? And why are there
man remorseful when they sin?
Some, I don't know.
I mean,
but anyway, those are all arguments from ignorance, And in fact, I would bet that, and I know that there are guys right now who are evolutionary biologists who could tell you exactly why cats have pretty stripes.
But I know a Christian that could tell you exactly why cats have.
But that's not the right answer. And again, if I had a small child in school and he says, "Dad, why do cats have pretty stripes?" And I could say, "Well, God made them pretty and we just love them so much." Or I could say, "Well, that's a very good question. And what advantage do you think there is to having these pretty stripes? And why would that advantage carry on? Why would it be evolutionarily advantageous for this cat to look the way that he does?" And there's an answer for it. There's a real answer where we can make a hypothesis, and we can maybe ask a question and test it against the hypothesis, and we could, look at results, and we could figure something out rather than just say, "Well, God did it."
It's easier. Miley's actually heard somebody in public with a kid. I think they were at a grocery store. I forget where she said she was at, but the kid was like, "Why is this like this?" And the answer was fired off, boom, because God made it that way.
Well, that's a shitty answer.
Yeah.
And shame on that parent for saying that. Yeah. Because that's not true, though.
Well, even even for the sake of their argument, just because they do believe that parent, I would suspect that parent 100% believes that God did create everything. There is a better explanation than saying God created. You could say God created it, and this is actually how the physical way it's been created. But not giving an argument, giving justification for it, but I'm just saying there is still a better answer. Even if you do believe that God created it, you can follow God created it by using the scientific method or whatever, you know.
I mean, I suppose so, but
I'm just saying it's a better answer.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I was one of those kids, like, I used to like to know the answer. I like to know things more than anything. I just wanted to know. I had this desire to know, and I always felt that, well, because God did it, or God did this, or God did that. I always thought that those were unsatisfactory answers. So then when I learned that the answer was really, really more complex and more involved and more intricate than I had even imagined, I was just in love with that idea. I just thought that was the coolest goddamn thing. How great is it to know that, like, oh yeah, well, there's this whole process of natural selection, evolution, and over millions of years, you know, these cats evolved this natural camouflage to blend into the surroundings, and it made them more successful hunters. And you know, that coloration just sort of evolved into existence over thousands and millions of tries at it. And
well, when it comes to cats, it's a breeding thing that we've done.
Well, but then there's that. I mean, now you look at what we've done to the domestication of animals, and that was only in, you know, just a matter of 10,000, 20,000 years. Imagine what you could do with 1 million years or 5 million years, or the Earth is 4 billion years old. That's so much time. That is so cool to think about. That's really the cool part about it. That's such a more satisfying answer than God did it.
Yeah. I agree.
Man, that's a cool answer. And not only that, you get a good answer, and it tells a great story. What a cool story that is.
I agree.
And I don't know. It's just I don't know what I would do if I had kids in school like that. And I guess the answer is I would just do the best I could. That's all you can ever really do. I would support legislation that was, you know, geared towards teaching evolution in schools, and I would not support I would not support creationist legislation in schools.
But the legislation that pushes evolution in school doesn't apply to private sector schools, which this is the scenario.
You know, but maybe that way public schools would be better and people wouldn't be faced with these situations. But I don't know. It's tough. It's difficult.
Yep. Well, we got roughly 10 minutes. You want to wrap this one up, or do you want to talk about something else?
Well, I guess we could bounce to it real fast, just because it's funny and I don't know why it's coming up now, but there's been a Facebook article that came from BuzzFeed. It's actually a year old, and it was from August 2011. Antigay Republican caught cruising Craigslist for 18-year-old male prostitute, and it's the story of Representative State Rep. Where is he from? Indiana.
I thought Craigslist removed their personal ads.
Well, this is a year old.
Well, I guess I don't know when they removed it. So.
But it was, Indiana State Rep Phil Hinkle, and he was caught with a gay male prostitute because he answered an ad where the guy was looking for a sugar daddy, and I guess the whole situation got awkward, and the prostitute, his name is Cameron Gibson, got wigged out by it because the guy was acting weird, and he tried to bail, and then it got physical, and then Cameron Gibson's sister showed up, and she got him out of there, and she took Hinkle's BlackBerry and started making calls from his BlackBerry
Awesome.
to all his contacts. And so the whole thing blew up in this guy's face. And then he offered them money to keep it quiet. And it's a big fiasco, which like I said, it's a year old. This isn't so new. But the funny part is the irony is that he voted for a constitutional amendment to ban gay marriage in Indiana.
Of course he did.
So this is just another brick in that fortification we keep showing and building up about how the guys who are most vocal about banning gay marriage and who are the most vocal about anti-gay legislation, they're gay. They're just...
Wasn't there a study that just came out? I don't know if it was a true study because I didn't read it, but from what I got from everybody else talking about it was that it was a study showing that it was a kind of a social study type where it showed the people who are more vocal about something, and in the case of the study was being anti-gay, are more likely to be gay because
it was a I forget where it was. And we even talked about it on the show briefly, where they asked. It was a self-reported study, so those are what they are. But in it, and sexuality is a very fluid thing. It's not like you're gay and you're straight. Yeah. And I think they use the Kinsey scale, which goes on like a 1 to 7 or something like that, where like 1 is gay and 7 is straight or something like that. And I think they evaluated people based on their answers on the Kinsey scale and evaluated their sexuality that way, and then it evaluated their responses to questions about anti-gay legislation. And they did find that if there was a correlation between people who were, but there was a key to it. The thing was you had to self-identify as straight, and then be vocally in support of anti-gay legislation, but then that correlated to that you were secretly like slid the other way on the Kinsey scale. There was like 3 different measures, and one of them was the self-reported I'm straight male hoorah thing, and then the other one was they assessed your sexuality based on like these sort of like secret questions. They sort of surreptitiously assessed your sexuality that way. They found that self-identified as straight, vocally anti-gay, tended to be really gay on the Kinsey scale.
That's crazy.
It was yeah, and the study was really subtle like that. So it wasn't just you spoke out against equality or spoke in favor of gay legislation, you were secretly gay. It was like you had to also really identify as being straight too. So there was like this third component to it. It was pretty neat. Yeah,
Miley's been making me watch. She's obsessed with To Catch a Predator. She's been watching it every night, and she made me watch one last night. And it involved a rabbi, which was just really, really crazy. But
yeah, that's bad. And it's so I didn't want to leave this out because Ken wanted to talk about this so badly. But I was like I wanted to talk about it too, but it's a year old, so this isn't exactly.
But I'm sure if we just took the time to look, we could find one that just came out last month.
We were talking. I was watching. So yesterday was NFL Week 1, and I was sort of watching the football game with some friends. And, of course, Tim Tebow was very successful in his game. And I was like, clock is ticking, man. He is going to be in a gay sex scandal any day now.
Putting the money down now.
Yep. My money is on the Tim Tebow gay sex scandal.
I think it's going to be him and what's the guy that did the dog fights?
Michael Vick.
Michael Vick. It's going to be him and Michael Vick.
Yeah, as much as I would love to see that, I don't know. And the thing is, I don't think we're going to see the Tebow sex scandal until he's like much older. It's going to happen. It'll probably be much later in his life.
But nobody
going to happen.
Hasn't the Tebow?
I can see the headlines now, like former NFL quarterback involved in gay sex scandal because he's going to parlay his career into some kind of. I can just see him like retire because NFL career is relatively short.
Yeah.
And
but he's already
the NFL quarterback career is even shorter, and he's either going to get hurt or he's just gonna retire outright, and then he's going to be involved in some kind of like mega church ministry, and then he's going to be caught with some like rent boy or something from Craigslist.
It's crazy. But I think
it's going to happen. I'm predicting it now.
Well, on that prediction, we should wrap up the show. So I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me and Bob go on and on. Ken will be back when we come back. Again, we're going to be without a show for a couple of weeks. If you have any questions, comments, always hit us up on zombiepopcorn.com. Hit us up on Stitcher. Hit us up on iTunes, Facebook, and Google+. We are there. Phone number, email, all that. It's on zombiepopcorn.com under the contact section. So hit that up. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want us to talk about. And we'll see you next time. Have a good night.
Jesus got out here.
I thought I was a good Christian.
Jesus died on a cross. I go to church every Sunday. Jesus got out here. Then I read this. It says Jesus died on a cross for a rotten hooker.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday. I am a very religious person.
I thought I was a good Christian.
The very lies the serpent told to Eve in the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion and promote lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion and promote lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion.